Okay, hi everybody. Um, Welcome to our webinar tonight called Homeschooling Children with Special Needs. And we're also going to talk a little bit about managing family resistance, even though it's not, the two aren't necessarily related, but they do come hand in hand with home education at some point. So thank you for joining us. This is presented by Alberta Homeschooling Association. We are here every Wednesday, third Wednesday of the month, and with a new topic. So we welcome your suggestions for more topics. So tonight you have me, I'm here. I'm a certified Canadian family life educator, and I'm certified in the brain story and also in some programs like the Growing Brain from 0 to 3. And I'm so happy to have Mandy here with us tonight. Mandy, are you there?
I am. Just
Yay! Are you?
My voice is a little off, but I'm here.
Oh, good. Do you want to do a little bit of an introduction of yourself?
Absolutely. So my name is Mandy Sharkey. I do run Epic Consulting Collaborative, which is now in Edmonton. I have supported homeschooling families for the past 10 years. To be upfront, I am also now a facilitator for E2 Academy.
Oh wow, congratulations.
Which is twice exceptional students and anybody with any learning disabilities of any kind. That's who we work with. So I do both. I can work with both hats on. And like I said, supporting lots of homeschool families in the Alberta area.
Great. Yes. E2 at Home is a homeschool board. It's on our list of and so are you living in Edmonton then?
Yes, I am back in Alberta. I'm living in Edmonton. I was previously living in Kamloops.
Oh, yeah, I thought so. Wow, I'm going to Edmonton tomorrow for the teachers conferences, so
yes,
I might see you around.
Yeah.
Great. Well, welcome and thank you so much for coming. Mandy has a lot of information on homeschooling and children with special needs. I have only, well, who do I have? I had 2 children out of my 5 that had special needs. One of my children had extreme anxiety, and my other child had learning disabilities, ADHD, anxiety, and being that he finished school, finished university, now is working and holding down a job, he's doing great. So we found a whole world of supports at post-secondary level, not so much at before. So we'll talk about that tonight too. This is me. Hi, I'm just waving. I'm going to turn my video off because, you know, I hate having my video on. So social guidelines, we welcome. Tonight is mostly ask questions. Let's share. Let's talk. And I can, if you want, if your backgrounds are quiet, I can unmute you and you can ask questions in real time. And we'll respect all opinions because everybody comes at this with different different backgrounds. Yeah. Before we go any further, I just want to outline how homeschooling works in Alberta. In all 4 quadrants, you can do online education or correspondence education, but that is classified as school. And so in this quadrant is public, that's school. In this quadrant, it's private or independent schools, and that's school. In this quadrant, there are charter schools, and that's school. And in this quadrant is called home education, and that is not school, unless it becomes shared responsibility where you divide it half and half or 80-20 at high school. So if you're doing half home education, you're in control as a parent. If you're doing half school, they're in control as a school. Okay, um, so although you can home educate under a private school or under a public school or even under a charter school, home education is unique in that it follows its own regulations. You don't have to follow the Alberta programs of study, and you can pretty well, it's your baby, pretty well. The home education program and the child is your baby. Now, because of that, very often there are not a lot of extra funding on home education. Um, Generally, your child would have to be on one of these other quadrants or under the school authority part of the shared responsibility to get any sort of extras. This is what children are coded in PASI and therefore determines their funding and their responsibility. So if they're an online student, they're coded 620. Home education is parent directed traditional, 600. Shared responsibility is coded 610. And then the home education part of shared is 611. The school part of shared is 612. And I forgot to put in here that there is 621, which is distance education correspondence. Okay, so that is the programs your child can be on. Many people do choose home education because of all of these circumstances, but a lot of them are their child's special needs are not being met in a classroom in a big group. There are challenges, so they're best addressed in a small class, a small environment like at home, where it can be calmer, it can be paced to the learner, and so much more geared individually. Okay. If you're going to choose home education, you put in a notification form like this. You do not have to apply, you just notify. And you, grade by grade is what you can follow the Alberta programs of study, or you can follow the 22 outcomes that they must meet by age 20 under the home education regulations. You have that choice. You could do either or. High school tends to be more outcome-based per course, not per grade. And here's your learning plan. So this meets the 22 outcomes if you're going to choose that route. Very simple. Put your resources in that you wish to buy or going to use, and then put down how you're going to assess those learning outcomes. Okay, I don't know much about special needs, which is why I've asked Mandy to answer your questions tonight. I know what to do at the post-secondary level. I'll just kind of go over that, is that my son would have to have been reassessed within 3 years of entering university. So we did it his grade 12 year, just so that he could get documentation and accommodations for grade 12 diploma exams. And every university post-secondary has an accessibilities office that will help you and your child apply for scholarships, apply for accommodations, apply for student loan and grant benefits. And all those things come to your student. They don't come to anybody else, which is kind of nice. Very nice at that level. Okay, so at this point, let's throw it open to questions. What do you want to know? Because I'm not too sure what you want to know. So how about if you write in the chat box your name, and then I can just go and unmute you. Well, that might work better. Oh man, that's a good question, Andrea. I tried that. Okay, what I'm gonna do is unmute you. Okay, Andrea, can you talk? I've Andrea, can you talk? I've unmuted you. There we go. Hello. Hi, Andrea.
Hi.
Hi. If you want to rephrase your question again, and that's a good question for Mandy.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like we're homeschooling right now, and I don't know, my daughter was in school in the past, like in a, like a public education, like in a school, and they had exempted her from the provincial exams and those kinds of things.
Yep.
But now that we're homeschooling, I don't know how to deal with those things, right?
Yeah. Nobody, even in school or homeschooling, has to write the provincial exams. You can send a letter in to your school authority and say, for whatever reason, you do not want your child writing them. Now, diploma exams are kind of high stakes. They're the end of grade 12 core subjects. And Mandy, is there any way someone can excuse themselves from diploma exams? Especially, like if they have anxiety or
I have not yet encountered that one. I have encountered accommodating out the wazoo though. So accommodations are applied for by your learning facilitator. They're not applied for by you. So whoever your facilitator is needs to be filling out the documentation, usually 6 to 8 weeks before you write an exam. Hopefully there's documentation showing that you have been providing that support all the way along. So if you don't have an IPP or haven't had a need for an IPP, then usually learning facilitators should be noting when they're talking to you what kinds of accommodations they are giving or you are giving in the course of your homeschooling. Now the problem is a lot of those accommodations kind of come up naturally. So sometimes we forget to document them, right? As for total exemption, you can challenge the exam. And then it is up to the school board how you show that knowledge. Most of them are just going to make you write a test anyway to challenge the exam. Others will let you show knowledge sometimes by doing it orally or simply by having a reader and a scribe.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I have not had anybody get out of a diploma or need to be out of a diploma. That may be the issue.
Yeah. I know I pursued that with my son who had anxiety, just because, they don't do good on exams. And no way, they had to write the same exam, same time. I mean, they could have written in a quieter room, maybe not, in a room with 400 kids or anything, but they could write in a one-on-one or something like that, but they had to write them. There was no getting out of it. Or like you said, they could have accommodations like a scribe or someone to read the exam to them or whatever. But yeah, they just had to do it. Yeah. Oh, bummer.
Yeah.
Good question. Okay.
No, though. Thank you.
I have no problem exploring that further if you want me to, Andrea. I can put my email in the chat box and just give me a shout and let me see if there's anything. Just not being the principal of my school, I can't guarantee that I haven't missed something.
Okay,
right?
awesome. Thank you.
And like I said, I've never had anybody try. I usually at this level just teach the kids to only take the ones for the courses that they need for university rather than all of them. Does that make sense? So if you only need language arts and math, only take language arts and math. Don't do social studies and science.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other thing too is that if, you know, I say they're high stakes, but they're not really high stakes. I mean, kids can take them again in 6 months, and you know, you just have to pay another $26, and then they've had practice with the exam before, so then they probably do better because they're more familiar with it too. So, and then the mark that registers is the highest one on the transcript. So it is recoverable.
I didn't know they could take them again. That's good to know.
Yes, you can take them more than once. You just have to wait till the following sitting of them.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, so you wouldn't be able to take them twice in one exam period. The other thing is to be able, if you have accommodations going on anyway, and you want those accommodations to keep going forward, like Judy pointed out, you need to have
7:17 p.m.
an IPP in place, or like a list of those exemptions or accommodations that you had before, and that comes in handy when you're talking to your accessibility offices as well, once they get to post-secondary.
Okay.
Yeah, they definitely want to see paperwork, and probably what we were told at the university was that they're getting a little more stricter. They want to see if it's a permanent disability. You got to be sure that permanent is in the record, and then they don't have to keep reapplying every year for more grants. It'll just come automatically then. So if they're assessed once, they do it, that's done, kind of thing.
Okay.
There are very few disabilities that require significant accommodation that aren't permanent.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a rough one. The other thing is, yes, if you only have a 3rd grade report that you've been working off for the last 8 or 9 years, then it does pose an issue, because hopefully their skills have improved over that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Okay.
Thank
Good.
you.
I hope that answers.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Mandy. Anyone else? Questions? Okay. Anybody else have a question for Mandy? And Mandy's email is in the chat box if anybody wants to ask her, maybe even a personal question that you don't want to share. Okay, Amanda has a question about accommodating older non-readers. Okay, you want Amanda? Let's see if you can. Amanda, do you want to talk to that?
I was just going to ask, Amanda, is it a learning disability that you're aware of, or just no interest in reading?
Hi, Amanda. I unmuted you, so you have to unmute yourself. Next time I'm going to do this as a meeting instead of a webinar.
It's a little bit easier, yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Hi, Amanda. Yep, we can hear you.
Awesome. It's a formal disability.
Okay.
Like he's
And
been through the diagnostic process.
already. Okay.
Yeah.
So then accommodating.
I'm just wondering how you do those other subjects when they can't read.
Wow. What grade?
Okay, so there's a lot of technological support that you can use, or you as the adult end up reading a lot of stuff. Sorry. Okay, so there's a couple of things like in social studies, you can use CanPrint, for example, which is a reading service for current events. There's a program called Voice Dream that my husband uses, who's also a non-reader, or Audible. So all of the plays, novel studies, that sort of thing are all done through Audible, for example. And Voice Dream takes what's called an OCR, optic character recognition, PDF, and puts it into oral for you, which can be a little annoying because it's still a computer voice, right? But Voice Dream does their best to make it sound as natural as possible.
In terms of writing, does that mean you're going to do all the writing for them too?
No, in terms of writing, I'm going to avoid projects unless absolutely necessary that require writing.
Okay.
So I'm going to record their ideas and thoughts. So we use Notability. That's what we use at my house, just because I live with this every day. And my husband uses Siri to record his text messages. Otherwise, nobody would know what he was saying. And he uses the voice memo option when recording lists, when recording his thoughts, so that they're not lost.
Okay.
And to be able to voice an opinion and state an argument, right? So you can voice an opinion and state an argument well, even using those voice recorders. And Voice Dream is just the textbook kind of reader. So there's a few ways to do it. The other thing is there's mind mapping instead. If it's only social and language arts, at that point, I usually ask, is social studies something they would like to pursue at higher education, or you just want to keep the door open? If it's just want to keep the door open, take it as far as you can, using all the accommodations that we have, right? Which are all the readers, writers, that sort of thing. Dragon Speak is an option.
I think my son used that one and it was really
yeah. Unfortunately, it hasn't improved much.
No, it hasn't.
It still has to learn the person, which can be frustrating, right? Yeah. Otherwise, for non-readers, besides the auditory, are they a visual learner? So then we're looking for more CTS courses. We're looking for more ways to approach the curriculum with a manual, or with Minecraft, or with, it depends on what age they are.
Yeah.
Star Wars, with movies, with documentaries, with the wide variety of crash course in YouTube that exist.
Right.
I would say, like, even now for English language arts 30, the kids can use a movie, a film, to write their essay on, and they don't even have to write an essay if they want to write not a poem, but if they want to write a diary entry or something like that. There are more visual elements allowed now to help. So, for example, if they don't want to read, a Shakespeare play, Othello, they can watch the movie, right? Even with subtitles, they could watch it. Or A Streetcar Named Desire, you could watch a movie. I have boys and they hate reading and hate writing, but they like movies. So like Mandy says, you can do a lot more visual rather than just reading.
Right. And that's pretty much what I'm doing. I was just wondering if I was missing something.
Well, the other thing is to look, sometimes is to look a little bit creatively too. If you've ever seen the little videos on how it should have ended, like there are other ways to approach that writing element that may help get past some of the block by creating something different. So a video, or even hitting up their friends who are better in those areas If they come up with the idea flow, can someone else produce it for them?
Right.
Which is not a bad thing. It's called delegating.
Yeah.
You're just teaching 21st century skills before it actually gets in the workplace.
And the emphasis on writing is really decreasing. I remember going to university way back when, and we had to routinely turn in 15 to 20 page reports and essays. And my daughter went about 3 years ago, and she took English. So she was writing English. The biggest essay was about 1,500 words, which is, a few pages. So definitely that society push to read is going down and write. I think we're going way more icon and visual based than we ever have before. So we're preparing our kids for what is coming up. And when you're homeschooling, there's so many ways. They don't need to write an essay. They can do a PowerPoint presentation, or, as long as they have some output on what they're learning, usually that's a good, acceptable substitute. So you don't have to worry that you're going to read your child everything.
And the other thing is being able to organize your thoughts orally, right? So if writing isn't your thing, then you're probably the best salesman on the planet. I know my husband's a pretty good salesman. He can talk people into many things, because he's not reliant on a memo, or he's not reliant on an email. He's very good at making sure he can get his point across verbally, right?
Yeah, recording, right? I mean, if they want to record, I remember my son recorded his impressions for CALM, for career and life management, and that took the place of an essay. So just as long as you can somewhat get your thoughts out in a coherent way, there are ways to be accommodating, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Mandy. Okay, anybody else? Any questions? Yeah, next time I'm definitely doing a meeting. Now I have to get back to the chat box. Okay, where's it? Here we are. Okay. Anybody else have any questions for Mandy? I think we're a quiet bunch tonight, Mandy. We had a whole bunch of questions last year. Can you, maybe while we're waiting, can you address, is there anything that can be funded on home education, or like if parents want more help for things like occupational therapy or speech language help, do they have to go directly to Alberta Health Services? Because if they're on home education, they can't really access those things through their school, right?
Okay, Andrea, I'll get to your question in just a second. No. So this is the hard part. They usually are privately funded at that point. Otherwise, we have had some success negotiating with FSCD, because they're not being able to access it in the system. But it can take an appeals process, which is not always what families want to stress about, right? So I have had a little bit of success accessing OT and SLP, even for older children, through FSCD. by pointing out that the community school couldn't support their needs. So this is why we've chosen to homeschool. How can you, sorry, cat. How can you support us additionally so that this family doesn't end up in crisis kind of approach. But that can be very stressful to do it that way. Otherwise, it's privately funded, unfortunately. We are not BC.
Yeah.
BC has a very different system, and I think that's why parents here sometimes get confused. And have some very, very different expectations. But there's been a lot of litigation in BC to make that happen. So unless we're willing to complain about it, that's our status quo right now. And then Andrea had a question about assessments.
Yeah. Can you talk? Yeah.
So you want to know about psychological assessments, like a psychoed?
Yeah, like we had an ed psych test done a few years ago, like when she was in like a school, like a public school. But now, like, to get that updated, I mean, it's probably thousands of dollars, right? Like to get something like that done. And
$1,500 to $3,000, unfortunately.
Oh.
And that's why we sometimes ask families to wait until like grade 11 or 12 to get it done, so that it's done for PDD and for post-secondary all at the same time. If I can stand on my soapbox for a second, I am qualified to offer some of the assessments, though, like a Wyatt. I can't do a WISC, but I can do a Wyatt, which is part of a second. And our school does offer them. So depending on which board you're with, you should be able to find somebody who is able to offer one, or at least for the academic portion. So you're asking for a Wyatt, a W-I-A-T, or a Woodcock-Johnson. But that only updates your academic skills. It's not necessarily going to give you information about processing speed, working memory, those kinds of things. So an academic assessment, yes, you're going to have to push. You're going to have to know who to ask at the board. And that generally starts with talking to the superintendent in charge of assessments and just asking very nicely, is this possible? I know you have the people who do X. Could we do it for so-and-so?
That's great.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
The other thing you can do too is, I mean, they are covered by health plans, and what our psychologist did was split the cost among the family. So half would be under my child and half would be under me, because they said it's a family issue anyway. So that way we could, get more of it covered under her plan rather than just totally under the child. So that might be something to ask the people you're interviewing to do it.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody have any more questions?
Just some things that parents don't know. So learning facilitators don't generally create IPPs for students who are in homeschool, but that doesn't mean they can't. So don't let school boards tell you that they can't provide you with an IPP. You can request one at any time. And you can request one to show the accommodations that you are providing. And all you have to do is request that it be put on file. So don't be afraid to ask for those. Also comes in handy when you're talking to FSCD, Family Services for Children with Disabilities. And then also shows that you've had continuity of these accommodations over several years. So when you go back for an update to a psych ed or you have additional testing done, it can just be some of your background stuff.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that, actually.
A lot of school boards will tell you no because they don't want to put the work into it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But because it's not as legally binding here in Alberta, we can. There's no reason why we can't. And I've worked in Ontario and BC. BC requires them if you're homeschooled.
Yeah. Wow.
Right?
Everybody.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, it's also tied to funding, but it's a requirement, right?
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to ask for it.
Okay. That's great. Well, good to know. That's really good. Okay. All right, guys, it's your last chance. You can tap it here. So, Mandy, are you at Teachers Convention this weekend too, or are you speaking?
No, E2 is a private school.
Oh, right.
But that's the other reason no is I get to go. So we're a low arousal school, so which is a special set of training from Autism Awareness Center, and our international conference is in Ireland this year. So instead of going to Teachers Convention, I got permission to go to Ireland, which darn. But yes, I'm very excited to be able to go internationally and meet other people doing the low arousal approach too. So it's very cool.
Where in Ireland are you going?
County Kerry.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, it was cheaper to fly there than it was to fly to Ottawa.
Oh,
So
yeah.
like, totally. Keep going.
So you're a low arousal specialist.
Train.
So, trainer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that so in the classroom, that's what. So that's for classroom or also for home? Because
Okay, so just to explain a little bit about what I did. And so I lived here for a long time and I did the homeschool stuff. And then I went to BC and I did the whole family thing. So in BC, I support the whole family as a behavior specialist, but I can't call myself that here. Because you have to be overseen by a psychologist to call yourself that. And you have to be ABA, and I'm non-ABA. So I am a non-ABA practitioner that supports the whole family with a wraparound approach that includes low arousal and collaborative practice solutions. So yeah, I have my hands in a lot of stuff.
wow, yeah, that's good, valuable stuff. And
yeah, so it works for teachers because I also work physically at E2 and we use it every day in our classrooms. But I also teach families how to use it.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. All right. We don't have more questions. I just kind of want to address the last part is how do you handle family resistance? That's a lot of you'll get the whole gamut of reactions from family and friends, and a lot of it you have to take as though they're really concerned about your child, and it's a good thing, but a lot of it is based on stereotypes that they see out there in the media and in the news, and it's not really based on what actually happens in home education. Everybody who homeschools does things differently, so it's it's really hard to describe what homeschooling looks like to your relatives or that kind of thing. I mean, when I homeschooled, I didn't have my husband on board. He didn't know anything about it, and he said to me he's going to go to Peru and work for 2 years, and I said, okay, then I'm doing education my way. Which is usually the person who does the most research and has the most knowledge about it tends to fall in their lap anyway. So that's why they do all that research, and they tend to make the decision. But I find it helpful to if it's somebody I care about and they're really concerned, I say, okay, here, read a book on homeschooling. And there's a lot of, or read the Fraser report. And there's a lot of good stuff in the Fraser report. And then just kind of talk out what their objections are. What are they worried about? Are they worried that your child won't find friends? Are they worried that your child won't get to university? Are they worried your child's going to be behind if they ever go back to school? And you know, the answer to all of those is yes, they'll have friends everywhere. No, they won't be behind. And yes, they can go to university. Anybody else have any favorite ways of handling family resistance, other than just being patient and
Well, if I can talk for just a second.
sure.
So some of the more up-to-date research has also shown that when we're not meeting kids' needs in school, we're causing trauma, right?
Yeah.
So for special needs kids, being in a regular classroom can be traumatic.
Yep.
And sometimes homeschooling is the best way and the most holistic way to undo some of that trauma before it becomes permanent, right? So trauma is defined as a psychological injury by Dr. Jody Carrington that can be undone if we triage it at the time, right? So I find that's a really good way of overcoming a lot of resistance, is that everyone needs to look at school differently. And if it's causing my kiddo trauma, then please help me find another way to school them so that knowledge is not connected to pain, even if it's psychological pain.
That's very good. That's so true too. I know my son with special needs, I said he had to go to high school because I didn't know how to teach high school math and science. And second day in a big high school, this kid's dealing with anxiety. 1,500 kids, they have a lockdown. Oh man, he was freaking out. I came and picked him up and I brought him home and I said, okay, I don't know how we're going to do this, but you can't stay here. And what I liked about all the professionals we dealt with, psychologists, psychiatrists, not one of them said that homeschooling caused his anxiety, or, you know, they were all very supportive of homeschooling. And I was a little worried about that they would, you know, blame it on homeschooling, but they were very supportive. And I've come to expect that in professionals, that if I made that decision that's the way they're going to get their education, that needs to be respected. So yeah, I love that it's, you know, not meeting needs is causing trauma. We have a comment here from Aid that says, just keep doing what you're doing. Once they see their progress, they would agree with you. And that is so true. I mean, once my kids started doing good in high school, that's when my husband came on board, and now he is the biggest advocate of unschooling even. Like, wow, that was a total U-turn there. So yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. Hang around with people who support you. You absolutely need a support system, because you're going to have bad days. But you know, if your kids were in school, they would have bad days too. So, and you'd have bad days. So, have a support system to feed your soul on those days that it doesn't seem to be working. Anybody else have any tips? Yep. Andrea says there's lots of homeschool groups on Facebook for local supports too. Absolutely, there's a lot of coffee groups. Sometimes it's just nice to get out and laugh and meet people in person. That's fun. You know, get out with other families during the day, and we're good support systems for each other. Okay, Amanda says, is there a better approach when the questions are specific to high school? We're getting there and everyone is floored, we won't send them back. People in my experience see high school differently than the younger grades. That is true. I remember sitting in a school council meeting and even the teachers and principals said, well, high school is where the rubber meets the road. You know, you can play around from grade 1 to 9, but high school is the big one. But yeah, I guess so. I mean, high school is a bit important because that's the marks that get recorded on paper, which is that government transcript. But I think what people don't understand is how much more your kids are going to know than you will in high school age. You know, and we kind of discount that, you know, kids can be very good at self-direction. They, if they're interested in something, they will go past whatever you could possibly teach them. So, for example, my math ends at grade 8, and I didn't know how to teach my kids. All 5 of my kids went through homeschool high school. I didn't know how to teach them math or science. So, but when we got to that point, there was lots of people around to help. There were tutors, there was Khan Academy, there was friends that were engineers that could help. There was even kids. We'd have study groups where older kids and more experienced kids could help the younger kids. So don't worry about high school till you get to high school because you're going to find there's a lot of supports there. They don't have to be in a classroom. And, you know, and some kids are online learners. Some kids get it, but some kids don't. So, for example, what I did with my last son is we did all his high school English and social and comm and phys ed and foods, all those things I could teach him. And now he's done all that, and now he's going to an upgrading school, an adult upgrading school for his math and science because he's not an online learner, right? So he's getting all that. So there's many different ways to approach high school that can be custom fitted to your child.
And if I may for a second, not only that, depending on who your associate homeschooling board is, they should be able to support you finding those ways. So I have a high school student, for example, who has submitted all of the other certificates that he's done, right? Like, so wildlife certificates, those sorts of things online. I'll find a way to make them fit. Right? So let them learn what they're interested in, and the things that they may not be interested in or may not excel at, let me find a way to combine it with what does fit, right? Yeah. So I teach grade 3, 4 during the day, and I facilitate a whole bunch of homeschoolers. Fascinating sometimes how close they are in interests, because some of my guys are right up there looking at like hydraulics and stuff. And then, yeah, it's just fascinating how far they can take a project, even at the high school level, and still meet a whole bunch of curriculum along the way, if that's what you wanted to do.
Yeah. And that's what facilitators do, is they take what kids are doing anyways and turn them into marks and credits, right? Like the core courses take up about 55 credits, but 45 credits there is the other stuff, the food, science, if they're interested in that, or the, you know, the art, the music, phys ed, whatever they're interested in. That's where your facilitator is going to help you fill out those credits for them. So at least, you know, a little less than half the diploma can be done through what they're doing now anyways, for sure. Okay, so Roxanne says, would you say unschooling is a better option for special needs kids? Less pressure for them? I would say from experience with my 5 kids, yes, unschooling really helped with ADHD because you know, they're very attentive for what they love to do, like video games, but not so much with other stuff they don't want to do. So for us, unschooling and then taking a more self-directed approach to get high school credits was definitely the route for us. But for all my kids, actually, the ones that had special needs and ones that didn't. So, but I don't know, Mandy, would you weigh in on that one?
Yes. And the short answer is no. And the long answer is it depends on what you define unschooling as. So, if unschooling just means that we're not following necessarily the strict Alberta curriculum and we are not using worksheets, then I would still argue it depends on the kid with the special needs. If we're just saying unschooling means not adhering to a traditional school day, then I would say absolutely. It fits much better because there is a lot less pressure and the expectations are different. But it's going to come down to each child. So some children, especially with executive functioning disorders, may enjoy the structure that is provided by a workbook. Right? That doesn't mean that they don't need a more relaxed schedule. It doesn't mean that they don't need a more relaxed approach to expectations or a different approach to expectations. It doesn't mean that they need more or less recovery time after finishing said worksheet, right? But some need that structure. So complete unschooling, as in not in a traditional bricks and mortar, yes. But unschooling, yeah, we need to agree on a definition before we can say it benefits all. There's no one size fits all.
Yeah. Well, unschooling is learner-centered. So,
but then I could argue E2 is unschooling then, but we're in a traditional school setting from 8:30 to 3.
Yeah.
Because my class, my grade 3-4 class is learner-centered.
Yeah. Yeah. So
there's only 4 of them, so they have to collaborate sometimes, and sometimes they don't.
Right.
So it's a hard definition. And if we had an agreed definition, then maybe. But yes, unschooling has its place and absolutely benefits many, 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 many people, but some still need the structure, just sometimes with a different leader. And I'm not saying the parent's not a good leader. I'm saying sometimes the teachers in a bricks and mortar school are not the leader your child needs.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I would say that it definitely depends on each child too. I know that my daughter didn't do very well with no structure, so you know she needed structure. So even if it didn't look like sitting down to do schoolwork, it was she went for a walk at a certain time every day, or she, you know, she did have a rigid schedule of things happening through the week and on particular days. So follow, yeah, I would say with Mandy, follow what you know your child best. So what do they do well with, and individualizing the program for them is, I guess, that's unschooling. That is child-centered. So go with that. Okay. Well, we're 5 minutes away from closing, so I guess we're good for questions. Yeah. So Mandy, I just want to thank you so much for participating tonight. And just to recap, Mandy is Mandy, are you still with
I own Epic Consulting Collaborative, so yes. So my school is kind enough to not consider it a conflict of interest as long as I don't work with any families that are currently at my school. So I still provide consulting and advocacy on the outside, and I work for E2.
Great. Yeah, that's awesome. So Mandy is available all over the internet. She has her own, you have your own website too, right?
Yes, it's epiccollaborative.ca.
epiccollaborative.ca. Great. Well, thank you so much. And everybody, if you want to get a hold of Mandy and ask her something privately, I'm sure she would respond back. So
Absolutely.
thank you for joining us tonight and everybody else. And we'll see you in, thank you for, we're usually the third Wednesday of the month, but I was at Teachers Convention in Southern Alberta last week. So next March, we're back, and it's about spring visits and what to expect on when your facilitator comes to visit you this spring. So hope you join us then. Our whole year webinars are available for sign up. So thank you, Mandy, and everybody have a great weekend and hopefully enjoy spring. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and hope to see you soon. Okay, bye-bye.